Episode of the Marketing Podcast is brought to you by Neighborhood Domains. Every business needs a domain name, including yours. Visit neighborhooddomains.com and use offer code MARKETING to get 10% off hosting and domain registration.
On this episode, Eminem embraces augmented reality, Gmail is changing their font, bring Blackberry back, and what the heck is MayoChup?
Creativity sells. Applying the right creative at the right time is the recipe for great marketing. The Marketing Podcast looks at marketing news and finds the secret ingredients that make great marketing.
Hi, welcome to the Marketing Podcast. I'm Heather Watson.
And I'm Brendan Quigley.
How are you doing today, Brendan?
Very good.
Good.
I'm
Very
happy
good.
today. I'm happy every day, but I mean, like, today's a podcast recording day, so
Of course.
extra happy.
Extra happy. Do you listen to music?
Yes.
Do you have music that makes you extra happy? Like
Happy?
that go-to power song?
Like the happy one.
The happy one.
Because I'm happy. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness, already. So I'm a bit of an Eminem fan. Yeah.
I believe it, actually.
I am a bit of an Eminem fan. So I got excited about this piece, and I really want to talk about it because it makes me happy. Listening to Eminem makes me happy. Certain songs.
That's what I was looking for right there.
Certain songs? Yeah. I shouldn't, like, I'm not a blanket Eminem fan. There are certain songs that make me happy. Old school Eminem makes me happy.
Oh, what was that one? The Slim Shady show?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Slim Shady.
Yeah.
You're the real Slim Shady. Please stand up. Please stand up. Please stand up. I'm throwing it down.
Do I need to beatbox?
Yeah.
Give me a heads up.
So here we go. Eminem was at Coachella, which is an amazing music festival that happened back over 2 weekends in April. And I just clicked off the article and got a link to snap glasses. Wasn't that the last episode? And so this is coming out of TechCrunch, and I think this is super cool. And even if you're not an Eminem fan, you need to go and see this video. It was like shot by somebody who was at Coachella, so it's not really great production value, but hit up themarketingpodcast.ca. It'll be in the show notes. We'll link to it. But basically, Eminem has, for Coachella, put out an app that complemented the show. So people could watch the stage show live through their phones while they're standing in the audience, and it would do some overlay of 3D animated augmented reality bits on the stage. And as you looked around the audience, as this like little 2-minute video shows, the person holding the phone, turns to the left and turns to the right, and it's like superimposing those animated pieces over the audience and in the crowd. And there's some really cool stuff where you see like a giant Eminem and he's swatting at missiles that are kind of shooting off in the side, and then they come back down and explode on the audience. And it's eerily realistic, like augmented, but the reality part is there. There's definitely animation to it, and it's animated, but there's a real feeling to it. And I think it's neat because I'm like totally on an Eminem. How are you? You haven't got like 2 words in yet.
It's okay. Keep going.
Just go. It's neat because we're at a day and age with concerts and other live events where entertainers and performers are putting, making patrons, making event goers put their phones in secure little black bags, locking them in there for the show and telling them that no photography is allowed, no this, put your phones away. And here is an example of where a performer has said, no, I'm going to embrace that technology and I want it to be part of the show. Bring out your phones and let's add this to the value. I think outside of the production value of the app to be able to create the augmented reality piece, they're probably saving costs on concert setup and props and, all of the big infrastructure that would typically go alongside a stage show with a performer like Eminem, right?
Definitely.
So, so it makes sense. I think there's a good business case to it because we don't have to do tear down and setup like we used to anymore. We'll just, have this cool augmented reality video that's going on around the show while it's happening.
I was just going to say, to the point of embracing the technology, it makes me think of Radiohead, like steal this CD, and then they just started releasing their music for free, making their money off their concerts.
Yeah.
Most musicians the money they make off their CDs is through streaming. I think they get 0.06 cents a stream.
Yeah.
Not a lot of money.
Not a lot of money.
It's the concerts.
And Gorillaz is another band that, nobody knows who the band member, I'd say nobody knows, but like that you never see the band members. They're cartoons, all of their videos and everything.
Yeah.
They don't star in their own stuff. And I read a piece that augmented reality is allowing them to go on tour when they couldn't go on tour before, because they can be there behind the curtain, so to speak,
right,
and perform. And they're still, and that is true to their brand, because all of their videos are shot in this kind of cartoon augmented way, right? So I really think this is great, where somebody is a great example where somebody is embracing a technology and using it in creative, innovative ways. Is it marketing related? Is there a takeaway that a business can have that our listeners can value?
But I think what you just said is embrace maybe some of the things that your competition disagrees with.
Or your industry. Are not doing, right? Pull them in, and, where somebody thinks that something's a problem, look at it
Netflix,
as an opportunity.
Isn't it?
There you go.
Netflix gave you the subscription to access all of their
commercial free
content whenever you wanted, and now they're one of the biggest content producers.
Yeah.
So it's like something they did something right, and I think it was breaking the mold.
Yeah. Yeah. Breaking the mold. I don't know if that's a good segue for this one or not. Google is up to no good again.
Well, finally, Google is deciding that they're going to update the Gmail interface. That's basically what's going on here.
Right. So they're breaking their own mold.
But I mean, like, Gmail's been the same for like a large portion of the internet's life.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
You think people will lose their minds when Facebook changes? Like,
Facebook changes weekly, though.
Right. So think about that, though. Google is so entrenched.
Yeah.
I remember that interface from the first time I've used Gmail.
I know, but I think they're going to refine it. Is what's going on, and modernize parts of it.
Right.
So I like Google. Fingers crossed that that's going to go well. But we've got an article from Quartz here that's talking about Gmail and how they're going to switch the default font. So the font that's been with Gmail, I think it's like 10 years. Don't quote me on that, but it's been a really long time. They've had the same font through the whole time. The default, and it's known as sans serif.
Well, no, it is a sans serif font.
Yeah. And so they're going to now change that font to something that's better fit for mobile, which makes a lot of sense.
So they're using a serif font?
I believe so.
Right.
So the reign of Arial is coming to a close.
They've used Arial. Arial is a sans serif font. Just for those of us who don't know French,
font
sans means no, sans, right? Sans serif. And a serif are the little ticks that you see on the tails of letters. So Times New Roman, which you would read in any magazine, on the T's, there's like little ticks, and that's a serif font. Arial is a clean lined font. Just so we know.
So from the article, for font nerds, the big news is about the display. The Google interface font, menu items, for example, will change from Arial to Product Sans, while the default font for the email and messages will change from Arial to Roboto.
Roboto?
Yeah.
Mr. Rope? No.
Wow, almost. Both Product Sans and Roboto are fonts created by Google. And then they were talking about the leaked designs. Basically, the internet is welcoming the change. Arial doesn't work so well when it gets tiny on the phone. And so this is an improvement, or at least right now we think it's an improvement to the interface. I think the same thing when I look at it. I like change. I like the fact that they're redesigning Google. Like, for a long time, I used Google's product called Inbox, which is like a material design inbox that you can use. But again, it didn't give you all the features, so I found myself going back to Gmail to do things that I wanted to do on a regular basis. So I'm really excited that they're finally switching it up or refining it, like bringing it, like they just did calendars recently, and it was a welcome change. It maximized screen layout and whatnot, and so I'm hoping the same thing happens to Gmail. And this font change, while it might seem small, is going to make a big impact for phones.
Right.
And this is something, if you've got a website, you should be thinking about as well. Not does the font look good, but does the font look good and work across mobile and desktop.
Right. And for those of you who aren't following along on the video podcast, wait a minute, we don't have a video. For those of you who can't see what we're talking about here, we'll put it on the marketingpodcast.ca. But basically what I'm seeing is a difference side by side. There's a bit of a comparison where they're showing an Arial versus a Roboto, similar letters. What they're doing is going with an even more sleek, slimmer it feels like it's an easier font to look at, for lack of a better term. It has a little less movement in the font and less busy, although it's still weighty like Arial. Like it's got some thickness to it. So I would think that by simplifying it even more to a Roboto font, it would probably, I love your phone. I'm looking at mobile displays where they look so flat and paper-like, and we are trying to get like softer lighting, softer things coming off of our mobile devices. And I think that this is what that's poised to take advantage of.
This is a nerdy comment here. I have played with, changing the font on my phone. It doesn't work. Like it really matters. Like it really affects the usability of a product. I've tried to pick a font that I think is better, and you know what? I trust the engineers who put their effort into this.
Right. Unlike Apple, they don't even give you that opportunity
to
change your font. So you can change your font size.
Yeah, no, you have to kind of hack it on Android as well.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Okay. It's not an easy thing, but I have done it, and it's like, nope, going back now. You know what I mean? Like, can't handle it.
So have you already like nullified your phone? You've already...
Not this one. No.
Okay. Like you've only had it for like 2 months.
I know. I held off because I wanted to be able to use Apple or Google Pay.
Right.
So as soon as I unlock the bootloader, Apple or Google Pay is not going to work.
Right. Okay. Right. Speaking of phones, Blackberry.
What's that?
Did you ever own a Blackberry?
Joking. Never owned one.
No,
Never.
I was a Blackberry Curve hardcore user. Always like literally strapped to my hip, and it had like a little track wheel on the side as you're like to scroll up and down. And like a little square trackpad in the center. I still struggle. Like I made the switch from my Blackberry to an iPhone. I'm going to say in 2012, we'll call it. So not long ago. I was one of the last ones in my peer group to go to an iPhone. Truly, like many of my people had gone long before I had. But I still struggle by having a non-tactile keyboard in my phone. Like I just...
Like where's the case where you can just flip it over?
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah, I feel like I could go a lot faster typing, and I can type pretty quickly on my phone.
Before I got a smartphone, I had one of those ones where the keyboard slides out.
Right.
Like a dumb phone, but you had a keyboard, and it was like well used.
Yeah. I just feel that having that actual and the responsive keyboards that are there that give you that taptic kind of response where it gives a little vibration and press, still not the same. It doesn't do it for me. So I'm bringing this up because I've got this article that came out of Recode where very recently this was. I just don't want somebody to think that I've dragged an article out of like 2008. This was from April of 2018.
Yeah, the height of the BlackBerry. Yeah.
No, right? We need to. I need to verify this. So the CEO, the current CEO of BlackBerry, John Chen, wants to see a new version of the BlackBerry Bold 9900. So it doesn't matter whether or not you've seen the Bold 9900. It doesn't matter at all. But basically, he's like, I'm not the guy to do this, is what he's saying. But we liked this phone because it fit right in your palm. And he said, somebody should make that. We need a phone that fits right in your palm. The other takeaway on it was that he said, let's say it's $199 or $150 for the phone. You could make it very nice phone at that selling price. That's small, that had very limited functionality, but it's highly secure, which is still to this day one of BlackBerry's claim to fame, is that enterprise software that they had, that you're as an enterprise, your employers can access it, but it can also be easily recovered or wiped, and we need that as a phone, as a hardware.
So I've seen like Kickstarter things where they try to make like a simple phone, and they always seem to be like, no matter how streamlined they make them, they always seem to be like $400 or $500 phones.
Right.
And I often look at it at that price point for those features. I'm like, you might as well spend $400 or $500 and get yourself a phone.
I don't think so. I think that there is, for $400 to $500. I mean, that's our mentality. It's like, oh, if I can get this for this much, I might as well get the better version for the same amount. But having, feature overload doesn't work for a lot of users.
I like the idea of a $150, $200 phone.
Even a $500 feature overload phone. If you're not going to use the features, it complicates your life. We're trying to, I just said in the last piece, have that simpler, cleaner look, because we've got so much going on in our phones. And and we've said this before, I balk at the fact that we call them a phone, because it's not a phone anymore. It's a computer. It's a device. It's just as, if not more powerful than most of our home computer systems.
Yep.
So there are people, however, in my world, young and old, who don't need nearly as many features that are in the average cell phone, mobile device, period. They need a phone. They might want text messaging. They might want an app or two, and they might want the interwebs, right? That's it. They don't need it to track. They don't want it to track.
To be fair, like the phone I saw on Kickstarter was less than that. It was like call, text, ride hail, like an Uber.
Right.
That was it.
But
it had GPS built in and 4G networking and all this to make your, maybe it has Spotify playlists. So you could listen to music, get a taxi, and call and text people.
Right.
Or not even text.
It's know who your audience is, because you know what? The people in my life, I'm thinking about, my husband, who really just wants those 4 or 5 features. He can use it. He just can't be bothered with it.
Yeah, with a large battery.
Right. Yeah. My mother-in-law, every time she pushes the wrong app, I get a phone call saying, I don't know what to do. Right? Like something's opened on my screen and I can't make my phone work. I'm like, you're phoning me on your phone. I know, but it's not working. So don't put Spotify on it. Put call my daughter-in-law.
Yeah, right.
It's like speed dial on it. Big buttons.
I've seen.
I think there's a place for it.
I have seen launchers for Android phones, so you can change your launcher. You can change your home screen on an Android phone. But I've seen like simplified launchers that just put big buttons for 4 main things.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and also think like kids, like I know I get it.
Indestructible phones would be good too.
Indestructible, like I think about the the construction industry.
Oh yeah.
Where people who are working in the trades, these little great pieces of technology look great, but they're they don't do well in dust and in wet environments, and they don't do well.
Cat has a series of phones.
Yeah,
Caterpillar.
Yep, and they're good functional phones, and that's all they want. And I mean, I think about these people, and I hate to put sex roles to it, but. Most men in my life say that the buttons are too small for their phone.
Yeah, right.
Right? Like my thumbs are I got fat thumbs. I can't type.
Yeah.
I can't make it work. Right? So I agree. I think that this is like under the file of what's old is new again. And I think that there should be that token piece. And if it was brought in under one of the big brands that we're used to seeing, because BlackBerry's like, we're not touching it, because it would probably tank, because it would be like, leave it to BlackBerry to bring out something from 1995 again.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, Nokia. With the banana phone.
Right. True enough. But if Apple or Samsung or, any of those larger brands that have wider acceptability brought something out, I bet you it would have a lot more pickup than something. So, yeah, just that. I think there is a desire to have something that's more simple, and not just in technology, but just in life in general. And we're trying to control our life because it has got too unwieldy, and we need to be careful about that.
All right, I'm looking at the next article.
Go for it.
What is mayo chup?
Mayo chup. Mayo.
Like, I'm the kind of person who doesn't like sauce. This sounds like a sauce.
Oh.
This sounds like I don't like this.
I forgot you don't like sauce. That's funny. Mayo chup is it's also known as fry sauce. It's been around for a very, very long time. Most people make it themselves, I think. Where basically you're taking ketchup and mixing it with mayonnaise and putting it in your fries in it, putting it on burgers. Although I just don't understand that, because you could just put mayo and ketchup and it's like self-mix. I think it like self-regulates in the bun. No?
Okay, so this is from Adweek.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you monsters, Heinz will release mayo chup now that 500,000 of you asked for it. So basically, Heinz put out a tweet that said, want mayo chup in stores, 500,000 votes for yes, and we'll release it to you, saucy Americans. And 55% said yes.
Yeah, about 900,000 people voted More than 500,000 people voted for yes.
Huh.
And now that the people have spoken, as democracy should be.
But I don't understand. You're going to buy some mayonnaise because for mayonnaise only things, and you're going to buy some ketchup for ketchup only things, and then you're going to buy some mayo chup for mayonnaise and ketchup things.
Well, because you need more condiments in your fridge, obviously. Yeah.
I don't know about this one, Heinz.
Well, it's not Heinz, it's the people. The people have chosen. The people have spoken. So this is one of those things where people were asking for it. They said, you know what, we're going to put out a poll to see, which is a fun way to do some product testing.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Right? And also build a little bit of buzz about it.
I'll be honest, when you said poll, I was thinking Mayo McMayo face.
Yes.
Like the Bodie McBoat face
yeah.
poll. That
be careful what you ask the people.
Yeah, be careful what you ask the people.
Which unfortunately was their second question. Now
What
what
to
do
name
we
it?
call it?
Mayo McMayo face.
We need to submit that now. Yeah. So that's kind of where it is. So I don't know if they actually put a poll out on the second one. They said, you know, we heard you saucy Americans and we're bringing our version of the delicious duo you've been eating for years. Are you team mayo chup or should we call it something else? Let us know your thoughts.
I think there's a lesson here for product creation at the very least. You know, like you've heard about like the secret McDonald's menus or like the secret fast food menus. If you order this and then ask them to put it together, you get a special taste or whatever. It's like paying attention to how your customers are using your product. So they obviously noticed that people were mixing their Heinz mayonnaise with their Heinz ketchup to make a fry dip or put it on their burger. So they were like, we can do that.
Yeah.
There's just like that pipe to that pipe and into those bottles.
Yeah. I mean, Heinz mayo chup certainly doesn't have a great name to it, number one. But secondly, it is probably more likely like something like fry sauce would make sense as a name.
Yeah.
Which it is already called that. Like it doesn't exist as a product. Like you say, it
Right.
exists as something that people make in their kitchen when they're about to serve fries.
Yep.
And people do it in several parts of the U.S. and around the world. It's very common in Latin America. And they were a little criticized for this. It's like, oh yeah, they're taking they're taking credit for inventing something that
but I
we've
mean,
been doing in our culture for a
people
very long
were
time.
mashing up tomatoes and making ketchup before Heinz started making
No,
ketchup.
exactly.
Like
Yeah,
that's how these things.
It's a little weak.
Yeah.
I know. So they've let their people decide, and I think that's kind of cool. And like you say, they've listened to what their customers are doing. They've watched. They've seen.
And this can be done for anybody, anywhere. Take a look at what your customers are doing with your service or your product or your whatever, and maybe there's another opportunity.
Yeah, to repackage it as a different product or as a thing.
Yeah, and it's like I feel like you know, the infomercials where they're like, we have a non-stick whatever, but you can also use it for all these other things you can use it for.
WD-40 is a great example of that.
CLR.
Yeah, WD-40, it's like, you know, I would use it when my lock is frozen in my door, and that's probably the only thing in my mind I would use it for.
Right.
But if you go to their website, they list like 1,000 different things that you can use that product for in different ways. Baking soda is another one. You know, I've got a whole book on all the different ways you can use baking soda. And that's a way to increase market share is really what it comes down to. If you're teaching your customers how to use your product more, then they're using more product, and then they're going to have to buy more product from you.
Take your product, package it with the purpose of with the different purpose, and then put it in the place where that thing might sit
goes
in the store.
Yep.
Yeah. And it might be the same base ingredients, but you're
bundling it differently.
Yeah. That's helpful. See, I come back to this. Like some people might think, oh, you're being like, you're lying. But no, you're being helpful.
Yeah.
Because you may not realize that WD-40 gets the ice out of your lock.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you had a little can of ice de-icer for the lock, it's helping people find that use.
Yeah.
Yep.
There you have it. Speaking of helping people, we're moving on to our favorite things. Our favorite things is a part when we talk about things that we use on a day-to-day basis or in our world or that help us do the jobs that we do. And today, and we've talked about this one before, but it's Slack. And I
love slacking off.
No.
You knew that was coming, right?
Back in episode
Still
20. I'm still rolling my eyes. Back in episode 26, we talked about talked about it extensively, but not necessarily as we use it. We talked about Google Hangouts was kind of taking on Slack. So in that episode, we kind of just talked about what Slack is loosely so that people could understand if they weren't using it. So we'll talk about it again and how we use it kind of from a marketing and from an agency and business perspective as well. So Slack is like a modern day MSN chat, I think, is probably the best way to explain it. Most people understand that. We have a channel for our company and within that channel, I don't know if it's actually called a channel.
It's called a domain.
We have a domain.
So it'd be our company's domain and then channels in the domain.
Yeah, the channels are in the domain. So we would have a channel called podcast, or we would have a channel called projects, or a channel called random. And in those channels, we're talking about ideally those things in those channels. And we're able to integrate and use a lot of the other services that we use within Slack. And it makes it easier to connect files and things. A good
example of like an integration is we have a Google Drive integration. So whenever a Google Drive file gets shared, we get a notification in Slack and then a link to that file. So it's pretty neat. Another integration would be like Twitter. If we drop a link to Twitter into Slack, even into like one of the general channels, it'll like expand the tweet and give you a rich text tweet so that you can see the user and you can click on it to go to Twitter to see what it is. So really, Slack is kind of like the hub for all communications within the organization, allowing us to communicate either directly in private messages or in groups for projects.
Right. Sorry, I wasn't listening.
That's it.
Okay, sure. I was looking ahead because it was like Slack. Yeah, whatever. You should be listening, listeners. But I've heard...
Do what we say, not what we do.
I know about Slack. I don't need to hear you tell me how to integrate Slack.
What I would say is
integrated for me.
Slack is free, and you can jump on, and there's a lot of online communities have adopted Slack as just a way to connect the online community. So not in Facebook, not on social media, like a closed group. But there is a paid version, and they give you a lot of great features for the paid version.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a cool tool to use, and that's just how we stay in touch on different projects. And I think Brendan, you've said lots before in the past that you're not a fan of email.
Yes,
and I would not call it the email killer, because we still have to communicate with our clients who are not in Slack.
That's true.
But it does significantly reduce the amount of email that we would send internally back and forth to one another.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. That's a show. I'm sorry I tuned you up for a second.
That's okay. Yeah, I forgive you.
I'm deeply sorry for that. I was just dozing, having a little moment.
Well, for the Marketing Podcast,
I'm Heather Watson.
And I'm Brendan Quigley.
Thanks for listening.